The Knicks schedule is out for the 25-26 season, and we are going to break it down as we do every year. We're going to talk about in this episode of a two-parter, the biggest test for the Knicks early in the season, late season test for the Knicks, and a potential sleeper game of the year candidate next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome into Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and the Saturday co-host of the Locked On NBA podcast. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. On today's show, we got some schedule talk. Schedule came out last week. We took the weekend to think about it and also figure out a time when we could get on and talk about it together, because we're both having a nice busy summer and enjoying our little bit of time off that we have. But we are getting into the schedule today. Some of the biggest tests for the Knicks early in the season this year, some late season tests for the Knicks later on in the season that could potentially influence playoff seeding, and a sleeper game of the year candidate on today's episode. So lots of good stuff coming up on today's schedule breakdown, part one. There will be a part two coming tomorrow as well. But first, I want to thank you all for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. You hit the auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. All right, Gavin. So the schedule is out. It's certainly a schedule. Lots of national TV games. The Knicks are one of, if not the most featured team on national television this year, which is crazy to think about considering they were just a handful of years ago one of the lowest featured teams, especially for such a big market team. But obviously the new TV deal is kicked in, means lots of primetime games. For Knicks fans that don't like staying up late, which actually doesn't work for me. I love staying up late, but barely any late starts this year. I don't think any starts later than 8:30 p.m. So clearly the schedule being tailored for the East Coast people. But I think the biggest thing we need to talk about here is, what do you think their biggest early season test is going to be?
Yeah, the schedule is really backloaded. I'm curious if you agree with me, because I wrote out the early season options and I came out with 4 games, and then I wrote out the end of season options. I came out with 2, 4, 6, 8 games. So there was not a lot to go off of, and I feel like I'm maybe reaching with some of these that we'll talk about our sleeper games, and maybe some of those that I was underestimating fit in there, but I'll throw my 4 candidates out there and let me know if one of these was your pick. Mine were opening game of the season against Cleveland at home, Wednesday, October 22nd. And then all these are almost exactly a month apart. Then a month later, November 22nd at Orlando. I think that's one that I want to see. I just pre-recorded. It's going to come out in like a week or two. Our preseason preview episode with Philip Rossman-Reich of Locked On Magic. I think those games are going to be really, really fascinating. And I'm intrigued to see like how much Mike Brown is willing to show his playoff cards, or if, like Tom Thibodeau, he likes to play those games very straight up and not really reveal anything in terms of like specific scheme adjustments to teams that you would likely see in the second round of the playoffs that you would see in the conference finals. At Minnesota, I think is going to be really fun. They also, as a spoiler for one of my sleeper games, they play Minnesota at home on November 5th, but the road version of that is December 23rd, right before Christmas. I think that is going to be a great test, and you're certainly going to have some former Knicks there that are fired up. You're going to have Anthony Edwards, who always seems to take his matchups with Jalen Brunson very personally and does just an exceptionally good job defending him when he's really locked in. And then we have, and also last time they were there, Cat's return again, and Cat was incredible in that game, and the Knicks won by 30, so it'd be cool to get that again. And then on January 15th, at Golden State on a Thursday, I don't know. I like it when the Knicks go to the Bay Area. I feel like Steph always turns up a little bit for those matchups in particular, as much as he does at MSG. And for whatever reason, like the Warriors, the Lakers, the Clippers. Maybe this is wrong, but my intuition, my memory of the last 3 years of the Jalen Brunson era, the Knicks have just gotten their butt kicked by the good California teams. So I think that would be big for the Knicks to get a win a couple weeks into the new year.
Yeah, I think that's like it's funny because I guess like if we want to say early season in the context of what we're doing in this episode, it's almost like first half of the year. But I was kind of treating like I don't know, December-ish as my cutoff here for like early season. And then I guess that would be if we did a mid-season, it would be like Golden State. Although I like that matchup a lot too. That'll also be a prime game. Which is interesting because I'm looking at some of these start times. I don't know. I wonder if some of the West Coast teams are gonna like well, I guess that's one of the Knicks 10 p.m. starts. So I guess that's like one of their latest games, but I don't know. It felt like some of the games are almost like too early for West Coast teams, weirdly. But either way, I like that game. I think it could be good. I think it's definitely going to be entertaining. I think that particular West Coast trip too should be interesting, I guess. Like just a couple easier games, actually maybe 3 easier games, especially if you think Sacramento might not be that good. And then Golden State to end that one off. That could be like a potential capper of a really fun West Coast road trip for the Knicks, where it's Phoenix, Portland, Sacramento, Golden State, all on the road. Sacramento definitely will be circled on Mike Brown's calendar, I'm sure, that January 14th game. I personally, spoiler alert, this shows up somewhere else on this episode, but I had the game against Milwaukee at Milwaukee, Tuesday night game. First off, like, I guess just for the fact that it'll be the second non-TNT Tuesday night of the new NBA era. So it'll be one of the NBC primetime games at 8 o'clock Eastern at Milwaukee on October 28th. But something about that game stands out to me. I think it's just early season Bucks might be the most dangerous version of them this year because it's one of those teams where, I mean, I don't know, like Giannis, like has been pretty good about staying healthy for the most part, but he always kind of has like some midseason nicks and bruises. And, just, I think there's, if you catch him early in the season, you're going to be getting like the most healthy version of Giannis and like the best possible version. I think that's a big test just in the sense that it's going to be on the road, big primetime game. Their first 2 games in primetime are at home versus Cleveland and Boston. Although I do agree. I think I'm kind of just trying to be contrarian here. I don't think there's any other answer, honestly, than the first game of the season. Like, they got their butts handed to them by Cleveland, like every time they played them, no matter how many players Cleveland was missing or anything last year. They just got annihilated by Cleveland, like every time they played them last year. So I think that's really, I'm kind of beating around the bush. I think that's the biggest test, like early in the season. It's going to be that first game, and probably not worth overreacting to it either. I mean, obviously we saw them get spanked by Boston last year, and Boston set the single game 3-point record and all this other stuff against them in the first game last year. So you can only read so much into a first game. And then, they actually played the tightest game that they played with Cleveland all year, like in like the 4th or 5th game or whatever it was last year, early in the season. So, can't read too much into game 1, but I think they could come out and say, hey, this is the team we're going to be in the Mike Brown era, that first game, and potentially beat a team that really had their number last year. And I think that would be a pretty big deal to start the season.
Yeah, I wanted to hit that Milwaukee game first because I don't think it's their biggest test, but it's really one. I just think the NBC thing is cool, so that part of it is really exciting. But I think it's just a fascinating matchup in that, like, the Knicks have killed the Bucks the last 2 or 3 years, and our buddy Shaq's pointed on Twitter, which is a great point, that OG is about as well built to guard Giannis as any player in the league, and OG does a great job on him. We've seen Mitch also do a really good job, like when he's in the game and he gets that matchup, like he can to some extent handle Giannis physically as much as anyone can handle Giannis physically. But it's that on defense, and then on offense, what it's been the last few years is Jalen Brunson, like Brook Lopez at this point in his career, like similar to Cat, but almost an even more extreme version, because you can't, like in an emergency, you can't really blitz with him. You can't switch with him. He's just too big, too slow at this point in his career. And Brunson just torched him in drop coverage. And if you remember, they tried to put white AJ Green on him, and Brunson was just like flambeing the poor kid Like he very obviously took it personally that was what Doc Rivers decided was the best way to guard him, and just cooked him. And I wonder if a version of the Bucks with Miles Turner, a little bit more defensively versatile, a little bit more well equipped to slow down Jalen. They have Ryan Rollins, who's like a pretty solid perimeter defender. I still don't think they have that one like stopper that you really look at and say, all right, that's a great matchup for him. But just having a big that's a little bit more mobile on the perimeter, a little bit more coverage versatile. I'm intrigued to see what Milwaukee looks like, even though I don't think Turner was nearly enough in terms of their title aspirations. But I'm absolutely with you. It has to be the Cavs. And to your point, right, like that Celtics game, it was really all 4 regular season games against the Celtics ultimately didn't matter because the Knicks beat them in the playoffs. All 4 regular season games against the Cavs don't really matter in a sense because they didn't even have to see them in the playoffs because Cleveland got injured and they choked a little bit and they lost to Indiana just like the Knicks did. Ultimately, and yet, wouldn't it be nice to start off kicking the Cavs' butt after, like, to your point, like as the game after the All-Star break, and I talked about it last week with Danny over at Locked On Cavs, was such a low point for the Knicks, just getting run by Cleveland by 40 points. And I know what did Brunson or Cat set out that game, but still that was embarrassing. And then the end of the season one where they lost, and you referenced this, where they lose with no Mitchell. I'm pretty sure no Mobley. It might have been no Allen in that game, but Garland and Strus in the 2-man game just cooking poor Jalen Brunson and hedge and recover down the stretch. Like, even though it didn't play out this way, that kind of cemented in my mind that the Knicks just weren't a serious team last year. And of course, they ended up being kind of serious. And yet, like, I would just love for the Knicks to come out and make a statement.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, they certainly have all kinds of opportunities to do that with a few of their Eastern Conference foes early in the season. But it's really later in the season where we start seeing some of the games that could potentially shape their playoff picture, that could potentially create some problems for them. So let's take a quick break here and then come back in, talk about their biggest late season test, because I think there's a lot more games down the stretch of the season that could potentially have major implications, particularly as the schedule opens up and they start playing all these West Coast teams in the back half of the season. So we'll talk about that in just a moment when we get back in. But first, we want to let you know about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. And August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So you can crown your champion in August. Let me tell you, I apparently Gavin used this the other day. He was telling me before the show, but I'm gonna hop right on the same bandwagon. Detroit Lions plus 1100. I mean, if that's gonna get boosted, it's gonna get boosted more than plus 1100. I mean, that sounds pretty great to me. I don't know. I think I'm gonna look out for that on this 24-hour future. What is it called again? The Futures Day. On Futures Day, I'm going to be looking out for the Detroit Lions. I mean, that's who I think is a really good shot to win the Super Bowl this year. I thought they had a really good shot last year. I think they're likable. I like the Jared Goff redemption story. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, dearly departed from my fantasy team. I had to put him back in the draft pool this year after keeping him for a few years. So I'm a big Lions guy. So I would go with the Lions. Plus, Tim Robinson loves him. I think he should leave. So, maybe that's all part of it too. Anyway, visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, folks, we're back in and we talked about our biggest early season tests. And Gavin, now it's time to talk about our biggest late season tests. So, looking at our prep doc here, I see that you've got a number of them picked. So I'm going to just give mine real quick. I had one that stood out that was not on your list that's coming up here in a second. That was Monday, April 6th at Atlanta. It's going to be a Peacock game at 7 p.m. That to me, it still pains me to admit that I think Atlanta is going to be really good this year. But that one stands out to me as one of those games where, like, and as I'm looking at the last, I don't know, month of the Knicks schedule here, let's see, reverse engineering. Last game is on the 12th. all the way back to the 12th of the previous month. I mean, they have some games that are kind of tough. Like they have a game at OKC, they have a game at Houston, whatever. Like those are tough games in a vacuum. But I think this game against Atlanta is one of the last ones that I look at and say that might have an implication for the Knicks seeding and Atlanta's seeding potentially. And I think they might be fighting for similar position by the end of the season. I really think Atlanta, again, nothing pains me more than giving them credit for anything, but I think they had a really good offseason. I think that, they get Jalen Johnson back, hopefully at full strength. Like they have Dyson Daniels, who I think is going to get a year better. Obviously, have Trae Young. If Porzingis is healthy and good, like that's a team with a ton of defensive potential that has lots of shooting. Like they're pretty much built for winning with Trae Young in theory. And if they manage to make that work, like that could be potentially a huge late season test for the Knicks. So that's my pick. Just looking through the last like month and change of the season, but you have a bunch of really good dates here as well. So I'll let you list off some of your favorites that you have.
I just wanted to comment. I'm stealing this from Twitter, and I apologize because I don't remember the account that said it. It would have been so cool if the Knicks were playing the Hawks on one of Christmas Day or opening night. I just think I apologize for using this term. There's a little more aura there in that matchup versus playing the Cavs, which is, I mean, maybe some of that is because just Cleveland kicked their butt last year. And if the Knicks come back and get a win, maybe there's a little more of a rivalry there. But I think given the way Cleveland killed the Knicks last year and the way the Knicks just demolished the Cavs in 2023, if they had met in the playoffs again, there'd be something there. Obviously, if Tyrese Halliburton hadn't gotten hurt or the Celtics were healthy, like those probably would have been the games. And the Pacers in particular opening night would have been sick. And it's a bummer that Halliburton's out the year and we're not going to get that. But Atlanta would have been the next best thing in my mind, right? Like whether you want to argue the Trae Young thing is stupid or not, it's there. It's real. MSG fans hate him. He embraces it. KP coming back. Obviously, there's been a little bit more goodwill on his end the last couple of years, but there's still some loathing there. And the second him and Trae Young run a pick and pop and KP drops a 30-footer on the Knicks, you don't think there's some FU KP chance raining down from the MSG bleachers? I don't know. I think that would be so much more fun. I think the Cleveland game will be great just because it's opening night and it's a new era with Mike Brown. But I don't think the energy is really going to be there, Alex, in the way, like, if Trae Young walked in opening night and started lighting up the Knicks, MSG would be losing their mind. So I'm just going to shout that out as a missed opportunity. The biggest late season test. I will just run through these rapid fire. They're at Detroit Friday, February 6th, at Cleveland Tuesday, February 22nd. They play Oklahoma City at home Wednesday, March 4th. They play at Denver Friday, March 6th. They play the Lakers Sunday, March 8th. It's a crazy stretch. We're going to go into it in more depth next show. They play at the Clippers on March 9th, at OKC on March 39th, at the Rockets on March 31st. I am really torn on like which one of these is the tough. Like it's probably at Oklahoma City is just objectively the toughest game. I think they're going to be far and away the best team in the NBA. But I think my two finalists here are probably like a win at Cleveland would really say something. And I think beating one of or both the LA teams would say something because, again, the Knicks have the Clippers have really had their number. I'll always remember the Lakers and JJ Redick in particular. I think that might be my final answer because I think JJ Redick demolished Tom Thibodeau in that coaching matchup, right? They lean more into the wing on Cat thing than almost any team in the NBA. They put Cat into the action over and over again, right? Running pick and pop after pick and pop and just sort of exposing him. And I really want to see Mike Brown, right? That's obviously what was his intra-division rival when he was with Sacramento. Does he have some kind of answer for JJ Redick to do some kind of answer for the way that Redick is just going to like aggressively go after Cat again and again and again? So I don't think there's a wrong answer there. I'm just going to go with that Lakers game on March 8th. I'm really interested in that. And also, potentially the last time LeBron James plays the Knicks in his career if he ends up retiring. So that's kind of interesting.
Or possibly the last game that LeBron plays as an adversary before coming to finish his career with the Knicks.
Wow.
We gotta bang that drum, at least once this offseason. If we haven't already, that's that's the gift that keeps on giving is LeBron to the Knicks rumors. So yeah, we'll just start that one up early. But yeah, I think I like a lot of those ones. I mean, I think OKC is obviously, you want to talk about a test, like that's the defending champion and a team that is going to be in the championship mix most likely for the next like decade. So yeah, they're going to be the ultimate measuring stick. So the fact that they have to face them both of the times in the last like month and change of the season little unfair by the schedule makers there to do that to the Knicks. But yeah, I think either of those games would be a pretty big measuring stick as far as just pure talent. But I'm with you too. I think those two LA games are big, a big test as well, especially having them as a back to back. And actually, I kind of want to touch on that more in just a second when we get into our sleeper game of the year candidates. So let's come back in just a second. We'll go over our sleeper game of the year candidates before we close out today's show. All right, Gavin, we're back in to now get into our sleeper games of the year. So I bring that up because I ended last segment saying, hey, I kind of want to talk about those LA games you mentioned. My sleeper game of the year, for whatever reason, I think that the Clippers are going to be, I mean, they kind of always are, but I just have a good feeling about both Clippers games this year. So take your pick. I initially wrote down the road game, but I kind of feel it for the home game too. They have a home game versus the Clippers on January 7th. And I think that'll be right after the new year, which has traditionally been kind of a turning point for the Knicks one way or another in recent memory. Usually it was due to Tibbs's self-imposed, 20, 25, 30 game, whatever evaluation periods that he would start making changes around that time. So maybe we won't have to deal with that quite so much anymore. But either way, like January is generally a formative time for the Knicks. And just something about that like super experienced Clippers team. I think it's going to be a really good matchup. James Harden always brings his A game to the Garden. So that one definitely intrigues me. But yeah, I think the one that I'm more looking at is the Clippers game on the road. The one that you mentioned last segment, March 9th, second game of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights on a road trip where they're going to have to be at Denver first, which is a place where the Knicks and many other teams sometimes struggle because of the elevation and everything. That's a tough first stop on a road trip. And then a back-to-back versus the Lakers, then versus the Clippers. Obviously, you have to go across town now. It's not the same arena anymore. So there's that. I guess a little bit of commuting involved with going across town to the Clippers arena now. But again, another like primetime game. It's going to be a late nighter on a road trip. Luckily, they do have an early game the day before. So they have a 3:30 start on that Sunday game and then a 10 p.m. start on the Monday game. But I'm looking at that game against the Clippers as like it's either going to be them trying to salvage this road trip and that tough 3-game stretch there and like get like one win after having 2 straight losses, or potentially come out on top and have 2 wins to 1 loss in those 3 really hard games. But I just look at that as like a big game where hopefully the Knicks come out, and they've had some thrillers on their West Coast trips recently. I mean, I'm just thinking last year back to like the Bridges game winner in Portland, or was it 2 years ago, the LA the Lakers game where they were playing them, and it was I think in like December or something. I just remember I was out with like some friends that night, and we were like at this like stupid bar in New York, and I was like, they were trying to get out, and I was like, guys, we have to stay here. This game is still going on. Like this like late night thriller against the Lakers. Just those late night LA games, maybe that's part of why I love them. It gives you a reason to stay up till 1 a.m. and be happy about it. I feel like that game's going to be a killer. So that's my pick for sleeper game of the year. One of those 2 Clippers games I feel like is going to be a barn burner.
I like it. And it's just fun matchups because the Clippers will test the Knicks' depth, right? If they're healthy, and that's a big if, because I think they are literally the oldest team in the NBA over the last 25 years or so. But man, they are a solid 11 deep in a way like no one outside of Oklahoma City is. So that'd be fun. I had that Milwaukee game you mentioned earlier. The Wolves game at home on November 5th. I'm just fascinated to see like if there's any lingering negative emotion there, because remember, Dante DiVincenzo didn't play when Minnesota came to New York. He played in the preseason game with the famous Rick Brunson interaction and like the talking to the bench and all that. But we haven't gotten Dante DiVincenzo back in a regular season game. That one, it was so fresh. It was literally it was like 2 weeks after the trade. Like I have a feeling it's going to be much calmer they're going to have a package for Dante if they didn't already in that game where he missed, but I don't think they did. I think it's going to be all love, but I think that's potentially a nice moment. I mentioned the game on the road or against Orlando, but even before that, they play them at home on November 12th. I was getting into this with PRR, but I don't know if anyone's ever acronymed his name before, but I just did. The last 2 years have been so weird in that 2 years ago, Orlando went 3-1 against the Knicks, and everyone in the Knicks was injured. So those games were stupid and they didn't mean anything. And last year, the Knicks dominated the Magic, and the Magic had a myriad of injuries in pretty much every game. And I think that's going to be Orlando. I didn't go through their schedule. Maybe they played Cleveland before, but that is going to be such a great opportunity for them to come into MSG and just like inject a little bit of fear early in the season and say, hey, we feel like with I don't agree with this, but we feel like with Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, we have 2 of the 3 best players on the court. One of them is going to get to go at Mikal Bridges all night. We think they could cook him. Jalen Suggs is going to torture Jalen Brunson. Again, I don't believe this is what they're going to be saying. Desmond Bane will make all the difference. I'm fascinated to see how that matchup goes for the Knicks. At Boston on December 2nd. I don't know. I went through the Celtics a bone because they don't have a lot going for them right now. At San Antonio, last game of 2024, December 31st. One, I always really just like New Year's Eve games. So that's going to be a lot of fun in that sense. And 2, like we've seen Wemby and Brunson have like maybe the most electric duel the NBA seen in the last 2 years. I'm sure I'm forgetting one, but that's in the mix. They have De'Aaron Fox. They're a little bit more built out than they've been in past years. I think that game will be interesting. And then the final one I'm really intrigued by is Dallas at home on January 17th, just because that's going to be Cooper Flagg's Garden debut. Obviously, those generally don't go well for the Knicks, right? Where the next anointed star plays an MSG, usually they shine. I think it'd be really fun for Cooper Flagg to have an awesome game and the Knicks to beat the Mavs by 30. I think that would sort of be the dream combination there.
Also, notably, that January 19th game versus Dallas is the first, at least to my recollection, first non-matinee Martin Luther King Day game for the Knicks in forever.
Great.
And I already kind of complained about this on the last show that I did where I talked about the schedule a bit, but first year that we're not going to get to hear Clyde talk about like his experience in the civil rights movement, which has always been one of my favorite yearly things. I love Clyde's storytelling. So a little bit of a bummer with that one, but that will definitely be an interesting matchup. And maybe right at the start of where we start maybe hearing talk about Kyrie Irving coming back. Like that would be if things are going really well with his rehab and whatever. Like maybe that's where you start hearing rumblings of like, oh, he might be back soon. Would not surprise me if he tried to come back for the Garden, just because why not? It's the place everybody wants to play. So I could potentially see that being a big one as well. Yeah, I want to shout out your San Antonio pick though too. Actually, and Minnesota actually. Minnesota
Thanks.
Early in the season. I hadn't really thought about that, but Dante didn't really get to have like a real welcome home moment. And I actually don't know if it'll be all love. I think he might still be chirping at Rick Brunson. Like Rick Brunson's still going to be on the bench. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe bygones are bygones now that like both teams made the conference finals last year and everything, but he also might still be pissed. I don't know. What he was saying towards Brunson last year was not kind in any way. He was basically accusing him of orchestrating the deal to get him out of town, from what it seemed like. So I would
can you imagine yelling that at like one of your best friend's dads? Like that's, I mean, obviously it's no one's, well, I mean, I guess it's it's kind of Jalen's fault, but like it's a weird, that's where nepotism gets you, honestly, right? Yeah. It's a weird position to be in, but I just can't almost put myself in those shoes of like screaming that at one of my best friend's dads. But it's all.
Can you just imagine too, from Dante's perspective, if he's looking at this and he thinks of himself like did you ever have like when you were in like, I don't know, like 4th, 5th grade or whatever, when you're starting to hit the formative years and like quote unquote bad kids start like coming up? Like I distinctly remember I had one friend in like 4th, 5th grade that like I started becoming friends with, and then my mom was like, he's a bad kid. He's a bad influence. You're not allowed to hang out with him anymore, whatever. And I wonder if like Dante looks at himself like that, of like, your dad thinks I'm a bad influence. He's a jerk. Like he sent me out of town. He said we couldn't hang out anymore. Like he sucks. It's just, That's my fun fan casting of the whole situation. But
Mm.
anyway, we got plenty more to talk about with the schedule, but unfortunately, we've run out of time for today. So I think it's time to break for today, and then we're going to come back. We're going to break down some of the stretches that could define the next season, because we talked about some of the individual games that intrigue us in this one. But I think this, if you look at this schedule and you really start breaking it down, it is a lot of series of large chunks of games where you can even look at this point in the season, or in this point in the off season, and say these are going to be some pretty formative times for the Knicks one way or another at different points during the season. So we got a great show for you guys tomorrow where we're going to get into that, and get into also how we feel about the FanDuel over under number for the Knicks this year, and whether we think the Knicks are going to hit the over or hit the under. So we got plenty more to talk about on next show. But for today, this has been Locked On Knicks. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.